back to the Midheaven Podcast. My name is Candice Marie.
And my name is Michael, the Peace Dealer.
AKA Chocolate Daddy.
AKA Mr. Godiva.
Somebody said in the comments, did you read the comments? Somebody was like, the names that you guys call each other makes me uncomfortable, but I think that's because I watch interracial porn and my wife is white.
Oh my God.
One of the funniest comments yet. I was like, wait a second. I had to reread it a couple times, and I was like, oh, he's black and his wife's white, so he watches interracial porn. I don't think we're that disgusting. Are we?
We're just work spouses. That's all.
My work husband.
We have fun. I don't even know we had nicknames and shit that made people uncomfortable.
Yeah, we talk about Oreos and stuff like that, but we don't really have Nicknames.
Right. It's got me curious about interracial porn now. That's interesting. Hey,
okay.
The couple that watches porn together stays together. So.
Okay, I'm not even gonna say anything. Never mind. I was gonna say something, and then I was like, probably shouldn't say that. No, especially now that my dad comments on all of these.
Oh.
Yeah.
How you doing? Shout out to you.
Shout out to Candace's dad. I'll tell you later. You have an Oculus, right?
Yes.
Okay, then
I'll
tell you later.
I forgot there was VR porn now too. So I'm still an old soul.
I didn't know that was a thing.
What?
That's all I'm gonna say. I didn't know that was a thing, but it's a thing.
Well, I need to catch up to the times.
Okay.
The shizo.
Oh, having mic issues. Here we go. Hopefully, maybe I'll put this in the center.
Say this episode.
No, that's not gonna work. Hold on. We turn around. Technical issues. Thank you. So in this episode, we've been reading your comments, by the way, guys. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your comments. And if you guys aren't aware, on our page, if you go to our community page, we actually asked you guys, what do you want us to make podcasts about? What topics do you want us to discuss? So we've been reading that. Hopefully you guys are enjoying it. We put out some information on the nodes, and we've done a couple other things. This episode is going to be about how to deal with challenging transits and what would qualify as a challenging transit. A couple people asked about our most challenging transits, so we're going to share those stories with you. And then we're going to talk to you about the different aspects which may be challenging and how to navigate them and find the way out.
Mm-hmm. The wonderful world of aspects. The one thing I learned about astrology is that the zodiac, knowing what a planet means in the sign is cool. You know what I'm saying? Knowing what a planet means in a house is cool. But if you know aspects, you're already a pro. That's bringing it all together. And once you know aspects, you understand the language of astrology. You understand how the planets communicate with each other, how they dance with each other. And I didn't realize until later on that that's really the creme de la creme. So one major thing that we want to say before we go into this is we're going to be talking about challenging aspects, because there are challenging aspects, but there's no such thing as a good or a bad aspect.
No, you're here to supersede your astrological placements. Your astrology chart basically talks about what you chose when you came into this lifetime, where your gifts are going to be, where the challenges are going to be, where you're going to have hurdles. But oftentimes when you deal with some of these transits or these aspects and you learn to work with them, on the other side of that, there's gold. So
right.
We don't always take the same perspective as really stuffy traditional astrology, like squares and conjunctions.
Or the fatalism.
And things that might be more negative. Remember that when we're looking at aspects or transits, because a lot of what we talk about can apply to natal aspects you have in your chart, or as you're going through transits, it's about having those conversations and being able to understand the omens, the signs, the symbols which are coming from planets. And once you become aware of them and you work with them, it's that's where the magic happens.
Amen. And once again, I love talking about stuff like this, because very common questions you'll ask is, or people will ask is, okay, what zodiac sign cheats the most? Or what aspect is the best for this? And what you need to understand is, with the perceptual nature of life, right? You can take the same aspect, and for every single person, it'll be different. A trine could be hell for someone because they take it for granted. or it could be amazing for someone, just like a square. So the aspect in and of itself, like we just said, it isn't either good or bad. It's just, it enables you to unlock that treasure that, personally, some of the aspects that I love now in post-Saturn return have given me the biggest challenges and were not fun growing up, but I've come to appreciate it. And, technically some people will tell you these are bad aspects when, there's no such thing.
Yeah, good and bad is all relative. So we'll talk about that. So like I said, it can be applied to better understanding some of your natal aspects or better understanding transits that are happening, how to navigate them. We'll touch on some of ours. If you guys have any comments or any questions, please leave them below. We are happy to see what you have to say. And if this inspires you to want to learn more about your chart, please book a reading with either one of us or any qualified astrologer, and we can break this down even further. We will talk about things very generally, so understand that it's going to vary on a chart-by-chart basis. What might be a more challenging square in one chart might be something that's actually really positive and really helpful in another. So try to take this just at very kind of surface, value, and see how it applies to your own chart. And if you need help, give us a call.
And on that note, when we look into the wonderful world of aspects, we know there's trines, there's sextiles, there's squares, there's oppositions. And, or if you're at least familiar with basic astrology, you do know that the challenging aspects are seen primarily through oppositions and squares. But hopefully, will teach you that there is one that is far worse than those and super challenging, and it's the quincunx. And it's ironic because both of us actually are quincunxes.
And nobody really talks about it.
We're two different types of quincunxes too.
Closing and opening.
Yup.
Yeah. Yep, super karmic. That's super fun.
She's right. No one really talks about it.
Nobody really talks about it.
Right.
That, or it's called also known as the inconjunct.
The inconjunct,
Right.
right.
But basically, both of those aspects have to reconcile with each other. They bring out the most in each other, both in a sense of the sign and the house placement. So
especially because they are the different element and a different state.
Yeah.
Whereas a square, Taurus and Aquarius are the same state, even though they're different elements. Or a trine is a different state, but the same element, right? You have an inconjunct, which is funny. We're both inconjuncts, but we're also inconjunct Scorpio, Gemini. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Makes for a challenging, spicy.
Which is funny. Well, I think we both have because we have a lot of Cap in our chart.
Right. That
and I have a lot of planets in Scorpio, and that's like your 7th house, and so it makes sense. It makes sense to me.
And one thing you'll come to appreciate, especially in compatibility, is that it's the challenging aspects that keep relationships together. The positive flowing aspects are really great. They're blessings.
They can be taken for granted, though.
Right. And a lot of them, you'll see a lot more of those in platonic relationships, ironically, sextiles and trines. It's going to be the squares, the oppositions, the hard aspects that you're going to see in the deeply, intense, romantic, or like powerful connections, that because of these challenging aspects, these partners have to put each other in check constantly. And it's energy like this that brings the best out of each other if you don't kill each other first.
Especially because when we look at the zodiac, it's not necessarily just 12 signs. It's
right.
6 signs that have polarity and they're complementary to each other. So when you look at it that way, especially when you're dealing with oppositions or somebody who has a sign in opposition to yours, or, Gemini and Sag, or Taurus and Scorpio, or Leo and Aquarius, there's similarities, but they will challenge each other. So,
and complete each other.
Yeah.
The opposition. And what Candace just said is the answer for those who feel like astrology may not be as valid, because if you look at, if we look at the spring equinox in the southern hemisphere, now you're dealing with the opposite. And so some people feel like, well, if astrology is legit, then what about people in the southern hemisphere? Is it flipped? And it's not that it's flipped. Like she said, there's just 6 signs.
And the archetypes
So
are still going to apply.
Exactly.
Right, when you think about
They're
it.
both cardinal,
Especially because of
same state.
when the sun is in one sign, the earth is in another. So we had talked about this in other episodes where it's like, well, how does Capricorn season really relate to the holidays, right? The end of the year. Like a lot of people are checking out of work, they're traveling, they're going home, like they're not wanting to focus on what's going on with work. Well, yeah, the earth is actually in Cancer. So it's like there's a lot of like baking cookies, hanging out, wrapping gifts. So, you know, and there's a really great, if you want to hear somebody really talk a lot about that specifically, like flipping the signs and how that works and if it's necessary, especially for our friends down under or below the hemisphere. You want to go and look at Nightlight Astrology. He actually spoke about this recently.
That's awesome.
And he was talking about, does it make sense to flip it? Do you need to flip it?
Shout out to Nightlight.
No, if you know the archetypes, if you understand how that works, it really can be applicable in any sense. But that's definitely a good question.
And keyword on polarity. Polarity and archetypes are very important because it reminds you of the nature of our consciousness and as humans, where we constantly fluctuate from one side to the other. We think that we're one way, but it's partnerships that show us that we have traits that other people mirror that we may not express, and so we may not like and project on other people. And so it's just kind of, it's oppositions especially that will show you energies that complete, like with Taurus and Scorpio, where Taurus is value and Scorpio is desiring value, and Gemini and Sagittarius is, Gemini is the word and Sagittarius is the definition, and perceptual clashes. But you know, it really helps to complete the narrative and to give you an idea of what language. Once again, like the house is going to let you know where it's happening, the energy is going to let you know, the zodiac sign is going to let you know what the energy is, but the aspects are going to let you know what conversation is being had,
whether or not they're getting along or not. And contrast is a thing. Like we live in a world where there's a lot of duality, and we need that contrast, and we need the light and the dark. Otherwise everything just gets bland and it's not different, and it just gets muddied together. So we want to really move away from armchair astrology where it's like, oh, you're a Virgo, they're a Pisces, it'll never work. No, I'm more concerned with whether or not your Mars, Venus, your Moon, your Mercury is compatible. So there's a lot more to look at. Okay, so we'll get into the how to deal with challenging aspects really quickly. If you had to pick one of your most challenging transits or one of your most challenging aspects, what would it be?
Okay, so on first of all, on that note, what you said before was important, because the whole notion of like someone saying a Virgo and a Pisces isn't compatible. Speaking on that, what aspects will teach you is that, you know, the same energy that is maybe seemingly incompatible could actually be the reason why your relationship works. Like the same thing that might be seen as bad could be good in a certain context. But 31 years of life have taught me that my most challenging aspect to this day is, I'm gonna say it's a tie between two, but I'm gonna give it to one. Definitely my sun in Gemini, King Kungs, my moon in Cap. It's been a bitter war. It's only until a Saturn return that Capricorn is like, you know what? I used to hate you my whole life, but I see you, Gemini. You're not that much of a loser or an annoying burden that just talks all the fucking time and doesn't do anything. And then Gemini's like, well, you're too serious, bitch, and I just want to have fun. But then also, you know, more realistically, Mars in Aries square my Uranus in Capricorn growing up has always been difficult, because the Capricorn energy is such a leash for Aries, my savagery, and it's just like, I've grown up with nothing but women. So like, my mom, who's a Capricorn moon, like I've learned to suppress my Mars so much.
You gotta dance.
Seriously, and I'm
you
learning
gotta dance
to like
with that Mars in the
that.
12th house. Well, you like to smoke too.
That too. Okay,
yeah,
so
Mars in the 12th likes to smoke.
The square to Uranus, which makes sense, the Piscean house, but the square to Uranus exactly 8 degrees. My whole life, like sex has always been random. Like it's just come out of nowhere. Or whenever I make the first move, or whenever I try and move, I either do the most random shit, or my timing is just so off It's just like really difficult, or sometimes it'll just kind of flow, but it's like random, and I can't really like. It's when I don't try. It's weird because I'm a man too, and we're supposed to make the first move, but Mars is in the 12th house of release, so it's like anytime I try and express that, it's been very challenging, and then the Saturn just like leashes it down, and what that teaches me is timing. So it's been challenging, but it makes me a cold motherfucker.
And also connecting more on a spiritual level, seeing sex as something that's more an energy exchange
than just like 1, 2, 3, pump, pump, chump, boom. And
Mars in the 12th house is a really good lover, though. Mars or Venus, 12th house is like bed pleasure.
You get the best of both worlds. I'm the last 5 seconds, but it's gonna be the best 5 seconds of your whole life. No, I'll last 5 minutes, not 5 seconds. Oh my gosh. And I mean, I remember like the good way this worked was I had to go to, I went to, when I was in University of Texas, El Paso, UTEP, I had to go for financial aid. And the financial aid line was so long, it wrapped around the building, and instinctually, I was just like, nope, I'm not doing this. And I walked all across the line. I walked to the very front. I see a couple making out, and I was like, this is it. Hey, I just need to hand this paper, and I'm not going to be long. Do you mind if I cut in front of you? And they were making out. They're like, yeah, I don't mind. And that's how I cut an entire line.
Sneaky.
I was like, I love Mars and Aries. And I was like, okay, I can get used to this. That's what's up. But more often than not, like, I'll just do some random shit and like think I'm doing it right, and then it's just awkward as fuck. It brings the cringe, I'll say that. But if I were to choose between the two, I would say the quincunx is very difficult because simultaneously where my moon wants to like focus, the Gemini sun is talking about the most inane, useless shit at the same time, and it's just like it's impossible. Like, and that's what makes the quincunx difficult because you can't compromise it. Like, one energy is mutably thinking while the other one wants to be still and direct, and it's going in different directions.
Maybe that's why it works with us talking and like doing this, because Capricorn, Scorpio, and Gemini makes a yod.
Exactly.
And I have Scorpio and Capricorn, and you have Gemini, and it has that setup. So maybe it's like that's the release point. I don't know. It's weird.
And then also Gemini, Leo, and Capricorn too.
Yeah.
So there's that too with the South Nodes, and I've really come to love that yod personally because it's very dynamic. I think it's one of the most powerful yods. The Scorpio, Gemini, and Capricorn. I think is one of the most important yods, mainly because I'm biased as fuck and like that energy there. But like yods have definitely also been a really important, challenging, but amazing aspect. On that note though, I've come to love the quincunx over time because when you learn, especially with Capricorn quincunx, it's all about timing. And I would think Scorpio too, because I have a quincunx with my Gemini sun and Pluto Scorpio. But I focus more on the Cap because the control freak nature of the Cap wants to control everything the Gemini is saying. But then the Gemini doesn't organize the thoughts enough to like discipline it. So because mine's a closing quincunx, I've learned more dominant. It's really weird. Like I can now discipline the mind of the Gemini to organize with Cap. But the Gemini sun is so much stronger than Saturn. And so it's like, the Capricorn view is like, you're an overgrown man-child baby. And it's like, what do I fucking do?
But that's the beauty of where things, especially if like you're very Saturnian, like it'll really mature right around like 30 31, 32. Like it really, I've seen that for a lot of my clients. Like a lot of mine. I think mine didn't really kind of wrap up until this last year, but like I have the same in conjunct between my sun and my moon, and they're both Mars. So my sun in Scorpio, my moon in Aries, and I mean it's and it also in conjuncts my Mercury.
Okay.
So realizing that there's just been a lot of me being like, yeah, I can do it myself, and I can't. I can't do a lot of things by myself. I think I can, but I can't.
That's deep.
Or I burn out, or like I realize that I can only go so far without asking for support. So that moon in my 7th house means that I can give the support, but I also need to receive it.
Right.
And so even though I'm super solid with my 2nd house stuff, it's just me realizing like, yeah, but it can be better. It can be more refined. It benefits from having this supportive partnership, whether it's professionally, you know, relationship-wise, whatever. Like I work better with other people.
Share us the tea. What's the beef between Aries and Scorpio? What's that like?
I mean, well, I don't know, my whole life, and I'm super friendly because I'm a Libra rising, but my whole, I mean, you should see me in the car. Like, did you see the meme I posted the other day where I was like, it was like Danny DeVito, and it said like life as an Aries moon, and he got angry and he's like, I'm gonna stab somebody. Like that's me on a regular basis.
First of all, I've driven with Aries suns. If you've never driven with an Aries sun, do it at least once. You may almost die. I mean, you almost die, but you may feel like you almost die because like. And I'm so glad you said that because I didn't know Aries moons were like that too.
Oh yeah, but it's quick. Like we get over things very quickly. Like we'll get angry very quickly, but we get over it.
It'll be in that instant.
And it's in my 7th house, so I see a lot of like fieriness from other people, whether it's like people I'm in a relationship with or like clients or whatever. And I see that fierceness, and my Libra rising like flares up, and it's like, that's not friendly. But then I'm like, oh my god, I'm just as abrasive. Like
listen,
that's
she
me.
is not exaggerating. My father's an Aries. I've driven with him when he drives in Nigeria. My good friend Eddie boy is an Aries. He lives in El Paso, Texas. The few times I've driven with these people, every time, what the fuck is wrong with you, bitch?
Yeah.
What's wrong with you? I would beat your ass. And I'm like, yo, dude, like, are you okay? And the thing is, like, after seeing it so many times, it's like you can't even be mad at them because people be dumb as hell, and it's like now you can see why they get angry.
It's just
but
the Mars
they'll get out the
energy.
car like, what the fuck?
You just have to start shit with somebody. Like that's and it took me a really long time to learn to just not start shit with people. To like.
Do you feel like with the moon you can keep it in more versus sun?
No.
That just
No, because I have.
Is the moon even worse sometimes?
Yes.
Like, oh,
and it's in the third.
Oh, okay. So you go vocalize it.
For sure. And I have Mars, Pluto, Sun, Mercury on Scorpio. Okay.
Ooh.
On Scorpio. So it's like
intense.
it's constantly like me just wanting to like erupt all the time, and I've had to learn like, okay, like I funnel all that energy into work. And,
it's an experience, like to see the Aries energy blow up, purely instinctual.
It's weird because it takes me a really long time for me to get angry, but then once I do get angry, like
they roll down the window. What the fuck is wrong with you, motherfucker?
Yeah,
And it's like,
there have been some times that I'm like, I don't know how I didn't go to jail. Like I'll get so angry,
God.
I'll like black out. That's how mad I'll get.
And so once again, like it does look like y'all be overreacting, and then you realize, no, people are fucking dumb, and it almost justifies your anger.
True, spoken like like an earth sign.
Straight up. I started to peep that. I was like, okay, he didn't really have to do that. Now I see why he angry as hell right now.
I think for me, like I couldn't pick one. Because I've really learned to like love my placements. Like I've had a handful of astrology readings, and then like astrologers will look at my chart and go, okay, so this is a lot. And I'm like, yeah, it is a lot. But I came in like super focused on certain areas. And I think when I learned how to use those energies better, I've just been so much more zen. And like now my life is like more like the art of war, where like I'll really think about it before I decide to start shit with people. Right. And if I do, I'll go about it a completely different way. It's
like Scorpio helps strategize the Aries.
Oh, for sure.
That's awesome.
For sure. But I also believe in constructive conflict. Because I feel like conflict is good. If you got that moon in the 7th house, you need to have that conflict to kind of sort shit out. But my most challenging aspect, my Sun, Mercury, Pluto all squares my nodes in my 2nd house. So I'm constantly being pushed to like stick to my guns with what I believe in or what I value or like what I want, what I need, but it's more on a communication basis. It's like an intellectual basis. Like I need to share that. I think my most challenging aspect is the fact that I've got a fuckload of planets conjunct Saturn. I have Uranus conjunct Venus, which in itself has just been a lot of sporadic relationship stuff that just blows up. Pretty much because of me. And then I get to a breaking point. And then the fact that Venus has been conjunct Saturn, and that's my chart ruler. So I think for like the first 30 years, it was a lot of me being like, I'm never going to get these things, or I'm not good enough, or I'm never going to achieve that, or whatever. I mean, in all Venus standards, whether it's like success, relationships, whatever. And I realized that I'm so thankful for Saturn, because the Saturn return really kicked my ass, but in the best way, because coming out of it, I was like, okay, this is why everything was delayed. It was delayed for these reasons. So it really, I think probably Uranus Venus is my most challenging.
So when you blow up and get super mega famous and become the next Oprah, are we still going to do this podcast?
Fuck yeah. Hopefully we actually get beer sponsorships at that point.
Word.
All right, so this episode brought to you by Sobriety and Pressed Juice. I'm going to juice cleanse, so I'm not very friendly today. All right, so let's talk about challenging aspects.
Well, we know there's squares. I really respect squares. I used to hate squares. Like when I first started learning astrology, I was like, squares and oppositions are the devil. I don't want to see that. And for good reason. There's mutable squares, there's fixed squares, there's cardinal squares. Cardinal squares to me are a tug of war. It's one side going this way, the other side going this way. Or actually that's an opposition, my bad. But you can kind of see what the square. Cardinal squares are still gonna
Pressure trying to get 4 different places in your life to move, whether
especially during the transit.
Oh yeah.
When it activates that way.
If you have it natally, the cardinal square, whether it's a T-square, or T-square is more going to be the opposition, and then something that's square, so it's trying to kind of act up. But I feel like, number one, if you have a square, if you're dealing with a square, it produces a lot of grit.
Yep.
And being able to have that natally, while it can be challenging, it proves that you can do 4 things at the same time. So it's kind of like juggling, and they all hold each other accountable for doing something. And so when something changes in one area of your life, it kind of dings all 4 spots.
Squares are like the check your car light on your car. It's something that happens that you have to respond to. If the check car light comes on and you don't respond to it, you're gonna fuck up your car. So it's like
you're gonna fuck up your life.
Right. So at 90 degrees, it represents an outside influence that you directly have to deal with. If it's fixed, and the fixed sign, squares and oppositions, I love because they're so petty. It's all stubbornness. It's like this is Taurus or Scorpio or Leo is gonna do this, and the other is not gonna budge. And that, I think the square works with strengthening. So if I see a natal fixed square or cardinal square, I'll say that you're super powerful or you're super strong. But it comes with that difficulty of having to deal with it.
It's my life right now, this year and next year. And I see it and I look at it and I laugh every time I look at the squares. Because Jupiter this year is like so helpful for like kind of showing us like where Saturn's going to show up. And I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. It's like, nah, bitch. It's definitely going to happen.
And then mutable squares are confusing as fuck. Like with Pisces and Gemini, like mutable squares are challenging.
So many miscommunications, so much misunderstandings. Like, think of it like almost like a telephone game, where by the time like you think you got it, it's been completely distorted. So it can be much more challenging dealing with mutable squares for
I think that's the most challenging, because at least with the cardinal squares, you deal with it. With the fixed sign squares, it's just a matter of stubbornness. With the mutable squares, those can never be resolved, because you'll argue the same thing. Like let's say with a Pisces or Gemini, right? Or with the Gemini and Virgo, like you'll argue the same thing, but the way you see it is different. And so it's like one person says one thing and then the other person perceives it a different way. And the square won't allow you to see or how you're explaining it. So you'll twist each other's words.
Well, and mutable squares can also be, depending on the placements in the signs, that can be an indication of like people who struggle with mental health issues or addiction issues, or people who have learning disabilities, or like actual issues with like audio stuff, being able to hear or being able to remember things or relay information. So yeah, mutable squares can definitely be more challenging, especially just looking at what I've seen for clients right now. Just like Virgo risings are just really getting their ass kicked, because you've got these nodal transits in the north and the south nodes in the 10th and the 4th house, and then Neptune moving through their 4th. So that's been rather challenging.
However, this is where the squares are important, especially in the mutable case, because the purpose of them is to correct perception. And this is where in lunar cycles, where we see the squares, if we use the analogy of planting, they're important because the new moon plants seeds. The first quarter square is where, okay, now I have to actually nurture the crops. And then you start to, with the full moon, harvest them. So let's say like Gemini and Virgo. Virgo can say something that is factual, right? Like, oh, it's real that this is happening, but Gemini can point out how it's not true, or vice versa. So as a Gemini, I can say anything, right? It could be like, oh yeah, the sky is blue, I'm drinking a beer, and horses fly. And then Virgo is like, nope, that's not true. Like Virgo is gonna be the square that's like, wait, what you said isn't factual. Horses don't fly, and that's what makes it a square, because it's a clash. In this case of perception, right?
Yeah, definitely, with mutable signs. And then, what's interesting about this is like, then you also want to take into consideration the houses that it's happening in, which is a whole other conversation in
That'll
itself.
let you know where it's happening.
Yeah, it's where it's happening. So like you could have a cardinal square happening in a mutable house. Or you get what I'm saying?
Right.
Or in a house that would be representation of that. So then you can really break down, well, is it happening physically? Is it happening more like emotionally? Is it more intellectual? How is it playing out for you?
Mm-hmm.
I guess what's interesting about the square, in my opinion, is that it's the pressure cooker.
Right.
And it really requires you to do work in all four of these areas. Mm-hmm. And constantly, if you have it natally by transit, like I'm coming out of a year where I have a lot of planets in cardinal signs. I have a lot of cardinal placements in my 4th, 7th, and 10th house. And the last 2 years from the transits and also the eclipses, the nodal eclipses, really kicked my ass. But it's because I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing. I wasn't moving. I wasn't making changes in my relationships. I wasn't really showing up the way that I should have been publicly for work. I should have been getting more into doing this kind of stuff. And I was holding back from doing it. So I got my ass kicked from the transits and the retrogrades and the eclipses. But on the other side of that, now that the nodes have left, like I've moved and like so many things changed, and now I'm like, okay, like now I understand why those changes had to be made. And it was across the board. It was literally all of my angular houses. So there was action. You always see action or initiations with cardinal squares. It's like you have to start something. You have to do it. You have to do it now.
Yeah.
The fixed signs, they want to just continue to hold and carry that energy. They want to continue working on something you've already started.
And strengthen it.
And then, the mutables can be about the communication breakdown, whether or not you're listening, whether or not you're learning, whether or not you're believing in it any longer.
Right.
And that mutable energy gives way to the change of the season. So if something's not going to work, or if there's going to be a breakdown or a crisis of faith, it will happen with the mutable squares, and it's set up that way to be confusing or, bad communication, or just something that just completely dissolves, to make way for then what will be the cardinal energy to start new.
Right.
Okay, so what about oppositions?
Oppositions, I once again used to look so bad at. But
even though you have some?
I don't have a single opposition in my chart.
Where's your Jupiter?
Oh, I do. I'm so dumb! I actually have one of the most okay, yeah, I have Jupiter opposite Neptune, actually, which is the only opposition I have. And I'm so glad you said that, because I don't pay attention to that opposition.
That's a big opposition.
Yeah, and it's I need to start studying that more. But what I've learned, in fact, what am I talking about? That's the opposition that I've noticed more than ever since I've been awakening, where like Jupiter expands my emotions in Cancer. And then as soon as I get happy, I just feel like this internal constrictive force, like, bitch, why are you smiling? You're not supposed to be happy, like, what the fuck? And I hear this fucked up shit to just like, and then I feel like Kanye, like, like, whoa. And I didn't realize it's the Jupiter expanding, the Saturn constricting. It's like, Jesus Christ. But
keeps you in line.
Straight up, or I can just...
Because that Jupiter is exalted.
Yeah. Saturn in his dignity, all that. But, the oppositions, like, once you're an amateur and you see squares in oppositions, you're like, no. But when you're a pro, you're like, let's get it. Because it's challenging, and you override the challenge, and I've come to love oppositions so
Oppositions
much.
present opportunities. They allow you to go back and forth in and out of two areas of your life. In my opinion, it's like a teeter-totter.
It's a complementary.
So you go back, you can go back and forth, and you can do a lot within those two houses. So for example, if you've got, a opposition between your 4th and your 10th house,
Right.
there can be a lot of doing the domestic stuff, the emotional stuff, the home, the family, but then you go out and you do the career stuff. So you see the best of both worlds depending on the planets. A lot of it depends actually more so on the planets that are in play, because you can have a Venus-Jupiter opposition and you fall in love with people at a distance all the time, or somebody who is in a foreign country, or you could have a Uranus-Pluto opposition and you experience...
I'm so sorry for interrupting you. I said I had one opposition. My dumbass. I have a Venus-Pluto opposition.
Yeah, that's a big opposition.
Yeah, that's actually my most important. I'm so glad you said that, because I usually am into unavailable people far from me that I can't really touch tangibly, because my Venus is in Taurus, and like... Yeah, the opposition. I'm going to speak a little bit more on that, but thank you for mentioning
Venus in the 12th in opposition to Pluto in the 6th is just also, you just want to watch out for seedy individuals.
And I notice anytime I feel love, and of course I have like a weird 12th house Venus make out with my pillow, imagine it's with my girlfriend type of love. I always feel like this weird extreme Pluto hatred, like how dare you love, like you're a weirdo, like you shouldn't love. And whether I do it in a weird way or not, it's like my response to love is met with this extreme Scorpio hatred or pure obsession. And I noticed
Stalkers.
Stalkers too. I've had some women come straight to my door from overseas. And I mean, I like to, Chris Brown also has a Pluto opposite sun. He's had someone come to his house. So like, I've come to really respect and love the opposition, because it has you confront open enemies, and it's very complementary. I see it with Gemini and Sagittarius, where like, if we use that as an example, Gemini is going to represent the 3rd house lower mind, the one who goes to the hole in the wall bars, that, is very intellectually sound, but speaks on the small gossipy stuff. And then Sagittarius is the bigger picture, goes out there. And Sagittarius can look at Gemini like, damn, I wish I can communicate all the stuff that he can communicate or she can communicate so eloquently. And Gemini looks at Sag like, what, I wish I can go out there and like share what I know and like show people what I think in my head. And this is where both of them will openly clash. But when they connect together, or when you have those oppositions in your chart, right, you literally complete the energy. Oppositions are completion. And as a Taurus rising, I've come to enjoy that with Scorpio energy as well.
I like the oppositions. I got Jupiter in my 10th, and it opposes my Saturn in my 4th and my Neptune. Right. So I've kind of realized like, I can do the work from home. I can do that. I can build on that. It's emotionally fulfilling. Eventually, maybe it'll be like going out and traveling into the world and teaching and exploring. We'll see. But
and it gives you the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and I can also do like all the business stuff, but I can do all the domestic stuff too. So I like being able to do both of that.
So mutable oppositions are a clash of like opposite perceptions. I've seen this classically where, I mean, I was going to say I'm in love. I have a crush on a Sagittarius woman who voted opposite I voted, and I actually appreciate that, because you can actually see how we had opposite perceptions. And so that to me looks more like it makes sense. I know Sagittariuses who voted the same I voted, and I know Geminis who may have voted opposite, but to see that in that context helps you actually live out that conflict. And before, I'd be like, oh, you voted outside of that and I can't mess with you, versus, okay, what's your perspective? Obviously, you see things opposite that I do. And even though I'm not going to agree with that person, they're going to bring an insight I don't have that I can kind of, complete. And that's where maturity comes into really like embracing opposites.
Yeah, and also understanding the sign, really. I mean, the house is important, but the sign is going to be really important, because that, I feel like for an opposition, that plays a huge role. So then we have...
Fixed oppositions are going to be more like fixed, and cardinal oppositions are tug of war.
Yeah, especially cardinal. Well, yeah, cardinal for sure. It's like, I'm doing this, you're doing that. No. But I feel like a fixed opposition can be very challenging.
I think they're the most challenging, to be honest, because it's like this one's not moving, this one's not moving.
The friction can be good in a way.
It builds a lot of sexual tension, in my opinion.
Yeah, that can be good for synastry and relationship stuff. That can also be really great for just anything that's competitive, or having somebody or something, depending on where it is in your chart, push you further.
And then the quincunxes, to revisit that, taught me about rock, paper, scissors.
What?
Yeah, and how, like, if you think about it, cardinal would be, like, The fixed sign would probably be the rock, and then rock is beat by paper, which is mutable, but then mutable is cut by cardinal, which is, or scissors, which is cardinal. So like cardinal signs trump mutable, but mutables beat fixed, but fixed trump cardinal. And we know cardinal is power, right? And then fixed signs are strength. So you can be powerful, but the fixed sign is strong, so it can block your punch. And then you can be fixed, but the mutable sign changes it. So we change what you're fixed. And then you can change, but once I do something, it's going to change what you're changing. And that's kind of like the checks and balances there. And I realize it also plays out with the executive, judicial, and legislative branches of the government, where judicial is fixed, executive is cardinal, and legislative making up rules is
and like nothing works.
Mutable.
And nothing works. And none of it works. None of it works. Right? The system is broken.
It's all a mess. Ah! Plus corruption. So there's that too. I love that you said that. But
what are we missing? We're missing, like, I mean, some people would say the conjunction is, I think the conjunction is a power up. I think it's powerful. It's coming into power, but the conjunction can be seen as something that's more challenging.
The conjunction can be very challenging, especially if it's a stellium, because you're combining the energies. Like some people who have Mars and Venus, they cannot separate love and sex. Like sex is love to them. Sex is romantic, and it's hard for them to detach because it's all infused. And in fact, trines and sextiles are pleasant, but if you take advantage of them, they can end up being challenging. Because
it can be too much.
Right?
It can be too much. But a conjunction, depending on the planetary conjunction, like Mars and Venus, star-crossed lover is really passionate. Like you said, like they can have issues separating that. But, you know, a Venus-Jupiter conjunction or whatever can be more positive in terms of the horoscope. But if you're looking at like, you know, a Mars-Pluto conjunction, or maybe like a Pluto-Sun conjunction, a Saturn-Moon. But you have the Saturn-Moon. I have the Sun-Pluto. It's all about what you do with it.
I used to hate my Saturn moon because I've been emotionally constipated my whole life. Like I've always, every moment in my life has been cringe. Until my Saturn return, I love my Saturn moon now. It's like, oh, okay, I can control these emotions. But like, and even on top, and even more than that, and I love that you said Jupiter, Venus, because the thing with that is too much of a good thing is a bad thing. So like Jupiter Venus is amazing until you're expanding too much, and then you're doing too much, and then that's where it could be challenging too.
Yep. No, I can see that. I definitely know a couple of people personally who have that aspect in their life. It's conjunct their North Node. So too much is part of the it's part of the plan. But you know, conjunctions is that power up. So depending on what it's conjunct, and especially if you have like a Saturn or a Pluto conjunction, you'll really start to appreciate the power and like the lessons that come from that conjunction as you get older, and you kind of start to see why that's like your superpower or like your saving grace.
And to borrow on what she just said, like when you get to learn your chart and you start to embrace, you must embrace the aspects you hate. Don't ever look at an aspect and be like it sucks, because just like she said, it could be your superpower. The one aspect you hate the most could actually be the best part of your chart.
I mean, that's literally point blank. Like just circling back to some of the things that we spoke about, and you were like, well, the Saturn moon, but you really loved what you learned from your Saturn transit.
I love it now. It's like, oh, I'm a fucking asshole. Like, this is lit.
It makes it easier to live your life. Right? Okay, so I guess
I'm trying to be too nice with this. What the fuck?
My Venus-Uranus, I used to hate it. And I was just like, I had so much like dysfunction, like growing up, and also just like a lot of broken relationships. But I'm like, in the span of that and like learning more about that, that's where I fell in love with astrology.
Right.
Which is quite literal for my chart. And I'm like, oh, that's going to keep me going, because that keeps me very Uranian. And the more that I'm involved in that and learning about that, especially on a soul level, I'm just so much more calm. Like I'm not starting shit with people all of the time. Like I'm not this like little emotional roller coaster. So learn to love those difficult transit, kids.
Yes, it'll be a rewarding treasure with a lot of gold. And the cool thing about that is when you finally do embrace it, you get to unlock secrets that, you get to unlock secrets that enable you to look at it different. And like, you literally turn weaknesses into strengths. That's the best thing I can say about synthesizing negative aspects.
Well, you also like realize that it's not that the planets are doing that to you. Like life is not happening to you. Like the beauty of astrology and really understanding it, or speaking with a really talented astrologer, somebody who's going to say, look, this isn't happening to you. You chose this. If this is the plan, this is how it's going to go. You know, look for these signs. And as you look for these signs, you'll know that you're having these conversations with these planets. And in the process of that, it's like you can take your power back. So then a client can really feel like they're in the driver's seat and go, okay, I remember this is going to happen. Now I know why. Okay, I'm listening to you, Pluto. And then life is just so much easier, and we don't take things so seriously, and we don't resist change.
And so in a future episode, we're going to talk about how planets also represent people. So you can start to see who in your life and what in your life and where in your life these play out, how to recognize them. And in conclusion, we challenge you to do 3 things. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, and in the comment section below, let us know, what is your favorite aspect in your chart? Why do you like it? And what's your most challenging aspect? Not bad. What's the most challenging to you? And why do you think it's challenging? And what are you doing to integrate that?
Or what transits you're going through currently that's challenging. Maybe we'll chime in and let you know what we think. And hopefully this inspires you to want to learn more about your own chart. If you want to book a reading with either of us, check out our links below. Keep the comments coming. Let us know more of what you guys want to learn about in terms of astrology. And we will see all of you guys very soon. Take care.